Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Usually when we talk about the end of the world, we're talking about climate change or maybe AI taking over.
A really bad asteroid movie.
Exactly, or a bad asteroid movie. But today, we are looking at a different kind of apocalypse.
Yeah.
We are looking at, and I'm not being dramatic here, the end of Hollywood.
Right.
And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean the actual, structural collapse of the entertainment industry as we've known it for the last 100 years.
It sounds like hyperbole, doesn't it? When you say it out loud like that, it sounds like we're trying to sell tickets to some new disaster flick.
It really does.
But when you actually dig in and look at the stack of documents we have today, I mean, we're talking activist investor letters, boardroom leaks, these really frantic union manifestos. It's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
We are literally watching the San Andreas fault of the media world finally snap.
It's honestly wild. We're talking about Warner Brothers here. I mean, think about it. The studio that gave us Casablanca, The Matrix, Harry Potter, Batman, I mean, the list goes on and on. It feels like this permanent fixture of culture,
It does.
like Mount Rushmore or something. But according to these sources we've been digging through, Warner Brothers is currently a sinking ship.
That's a good way to put it.
And there are sharks in the water. There are people screaming on the deck, and the captain might be trying to sell off the lifeboats for parts.
That is a very vivid and unfortunately a very, very accurate description of what's happening. What we are witnessing is this high-stake corporate battle. It's like a hostility triangle, if you will.
A hostility triangle. I like that.
Yeah, between Warner Brothers, the legacy studio Paramount, and then you've got tech giant Netflix looming over everywhere.
And right in the middle of it, you have this board of directors that's being accused of some pretty shady maneuvering, to put it mildly.
To put it very mildly.
And the thing that really hooked me in all this research, the thing that makes it feel less like a Wall Street Journal article and more like a thriller, is this character, Enkora Holding. It's an activist investor, and they are basically standing outside the Warner Brothers building with a megaphone, just threatening to burn the whole boardroom down if they don't listen. It is truly dramatic.
It is dramatic, but it's also the canary in the coal mine. This isn't just about who buys whom. This deep dive really is about a fundamental shift in power. Huge.
What do you mean?
We are moving from the era of Hollywood creatives, people who, for all their faults, make movies because they love movies, to the era of big tech. And these are entities that make content to keep you subscribed to a shipping service or to a search engine. The motive is completely different.
So our mission today is to unpack this whole mess. We're going to try and figure out why everyone is so angry, who is trying to buy the rights to literally our childhoods.
Yeah.
And what this actually means for the movies and shows we're all going to be watching in, say, 5 years.
And I think this is the crucial question we have to ask. Is there even going to be a Hollywood left to talk about when the dust settles?
That's the billion-dollar question. So let's start with the immediate crisis, the boardroom brawl. We keep mentioning this name, Enkora Holding. To the average person, that sounds like a shell company in a spy movie.
It does, yeah.
Who are they, and why are they causing such a massive headache for Warner Brothers right now?
So Enkora Holdings is what's known as an activist investor. Now, for those who don't follow, Wall Street soap operas.
Which is most of us.
Right, which is most of us. An activist investor isn't someone who just buys some stock and hopes the line goes up. They buy a massive chunk of a company specifically to get leverage. They want a seat at the table. They want to influence decisions.
So they're the backseat driver who also paid for the car.
Exactly. But in this case, they're trying to grab the steering wheel because they think the driver is drunk and heading for a cliff. Enkora has looked the Warner Brothers Discovery, the WBD board, and they are, by all accounts, they are currently threatening to vote no on a proposed deal with Netflix. And this is the big one, they're launching what's called a proxy.
Okay, let's pause on proxy fight. I hear that term a lot during corporate scandals, but what does that actually look like on the ground? Is it just people in suits yelling at each other in a meeting room?
Oh, it's so much worse. It's a coup. It's a corporate coup.
A coup? Wow.
In a proxy fight, Enkora essentially goes around the current board of directors and talks directly to all the other shareholders, talking the big pension funds, the banks, all the individual investors out there.
And what do they say to them?
They basically say, hey, the current guys running this company, they're incompetent. They're actively losing you money. Give us your proxy, which is your voting right, and we will use your votes to fire the current board and install our own.
Wow. So it is a mutiny. A full-on mutiny.
It is a full-blown mutiny. And Enkora isn't doing this just for fun or because they like drama. They are doing it because they claim the Warner Brothers board is violating their fiduciary duty.
Fiduciary duty. Okay, that's the golden rule of business, right? That's the big one you can't break.
It is the only rule that matters legally in a boardroom. It's everything. If you sit on a board of directors, you have a legal obligation to do what is best for the shareholder, period.
And best means most profitable.
It means maximizing the value of the stock. That is your job. Your job is not to protect your own job. It is not to help your friends out. And it is absolutely not to make decisions based on who you personally like or dislike. You have to take the best end of...
And Enkora is basically shouting from the rooftops that they are not.
Correct. The specific accusation here, the core of the whole fight, is that the Warner Brothers board is ignoring what they call a superior offer from Paramount.
So Paramount wants to buy them.
Paramount wants to buy them, and apparently they're offering more. But the board is allegedly ignoring that to rush into what Enkora calls a flawed deal with Netflix.
So Enkora is screaming, you are leaving money on the table, and if you don't stop, we are going to sue you, and we are going to fire you.
That's in a nutshell. And they put a timeline on it, too, which makes it even more dramatic. They mentioned 2026.
Yeah, that's what the source said.
Yes, they've issued an ultimatum. If the board doesn't pivot and seriously engage with Paramount by the 2026 shareholder meeting, Enkora is going to pull the trigger on that proxy fight. They are basically saying, fix this now, or we are coming for your head.
So the board is completely under siege. But okay, let's talk about the suitors themselves, because this is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, kind of petty.
It does.
We have two main options on the table. Paramount and Netflix. Let's start with Paramount. This is what the sources are calling the Ellison bid.
Right. This is David Ellison. His company is Skydance Media. He's the son of Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, which means he has backing from one of the deepest pockets on planet Earth. So money is not an object here. David Ellison has been trying to merge his company, Skydance, with Paramount, and now he wants to roll Warner Brothers into that whole mix.
So he's not just buying a studio, he's trying to build a new mega studio, an empire.
He is. And recently, to try and stop this Netflix deal from happening, Paramount sweetened the pot, as they say.
How so?
They amended their offer to be, in no uncertain terms, financially superior. They are putting more cash on the table, more stock, more overall value. They are trying to derail the Netflix agreement by just simply outbidding them, making it impossible for the board to say no.
Okay, so if I'm a shareholder, if I'm one of the people Enkora is talking to, I'm looking at the Paramount deal and thinking, more money? Great, let's do it. Why is the board resisting this? What's the problem?
The problem for them is the structure of the deal. Paramount wants the whole package. The whole kit and caboodle. They want to buy Warner Brothers Discovery in its entirety. They want the movie studios, the TV networks, the streaming service, the cable channels, everything.
And if they buy everything, then the people currently running everything.
Exactly. Then the current management team at Warner Brothers Discovery is redundant. David Zaslav, the CEO, and his whole executive team, they're gone.
Right.
David Ellison is going to want to run his own show. He's not spending tens of billions of dollars just to keep the old guys in charge.
Okay, so now it makes sense. For the shareholders, the people who own the company, the Paramount deal is great, it's more money. But for the CEO and the board, it's a pink slip. It's the end of the line.
Precisely. Now, let's contrast that with the Neff deal.
Yeah.
The source material we have outlines a theory that this is, and I'm quoting here, a sweetheart.
A sweetheart deal that usually implies someone is getting a special favor that they don't necessarily deserve. What's the alleged favor here?
The speculation, and again, this is according to the source, is that David Zaslav at WBD and Ted Sarandos, the co-CEO of Netflix, have some kind of pre-existing verbal agreement.
A handshake deal.
Something like that. The theory goes that Netflix doesn't want to buy the whole company. Netflix doesn't want the headaches of cable networks and all that legacy stuff. They just want the good parts. They want the content. They want the library.
They want the Warner Brothers part. They want the movies, the IP, Batman, Harry Potter.
Right. They want to buy the valuable assets for parts, selling it for scrap. So Netflix takes the studio, the IP, the back catalog. But, and this huge, huge but, the deal would allegedly allow the current WBD executives spin off the Discovery side of the business.
And what's the Discovery side?
That's the reality TV stuff. 90 Day Fiancé, Shark Week, all those unscripted shows.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And that would become a new independent global channel that they get to keep running.
Wait, so that's Zaslav's back. He came from Discovery.
Exactly. That's his baby. So the theory is, if they sell to Netflix, they get rid of the expensive, difficult, union-heavy movie studio, but they get to keep their jobs, their salaries, and their power running this new Discovery empire.
That is deeply, deeply cynical.
It's incredibly cynical if it's true. It suggests they are willing to dismantle one of the greatest movie studios in history, a cultural institution, and sell it for parts just so they can keep their own little...
And it explains the fiduciary duty argument perfect, crystal clear now. They would be choosing the deal that saves their jobs.
Yes.
Not the deal that makes the most money for the people who actually own the company?
The source uses this fantastic analogy, the car sale.
Wow.
It really clarifies why this would be illegal, not just unethical.
Okay, walk us through the car sale.
Okay, so imagine you're in charge of selling a classic car. Let's say it's a vintage Mustang. It's beautiful, but you don't own it outright. You share ownership with a bunch of other people, your family, some investors, but you're the one in charge of the sale.
Got it. I'm the manager.
Exactly. So two guys walk up to your driveway. Guy number one is David Ellison from Paramount. He looks at the car. He loves it. He says, "This is an incredible machine. I want to restore it, take it to car shows. I'll give you $14,000 for it right now."
Sounds like a great deal. A fair price.
It is. It's a very strong offer. But you look at him and you say, "Hey, you know what? I don't like you. Your dad is weird. You might have different politics than me. I just don't like your vibe. No deal."
Okay, that's incredibly petty, but I guess it's my driveway.
Well, it's not really. Remember, you're managing it for other people. But then guy number two walks up. This is Netflix. He says, "I don't really care about the car itself. I'm going to strip it for parts, take the engine and the wheels, and I'm going to crush the chassis. But I'll give you $10,000 for it."
It's $4,000 less.
$4,000 less. But then he adds, "And I'll let you keep the fuzzy dice that are hanging from the rearview mirror."
And I say yes, because I really, really love those fuzzy dice.
You say, "Sold." You take the deal. Now, what just happened? You just took $4,000 less money that belongs to your family and your investors just so you could keep the fuzzy dice for yourself and because you didn't like them.
That's a breach of fiduciary duty.
That is a textbook breach of fiduciary duty. You robbed your own investors of $4,000 because of your personal preferences. And the fuzzy dice, in this analogy, that's the Discovery Network. It's the part the executives get to keep for themselves.
That puts it in such clear perspective. And the source actually mentioned politics as a potential reason for hating the Paramount deal, didn't they?
Briefly, yes. It was suggested that there is some personal animus against the Ellis. Larry and David Ellison are known to be more on the conservative side of things. They've been friendly with Trump in the past.
Okay.
And in Hollywood, which is obviously a very liberal town, that can make them persona non grata.
But you can't make a multi-billion-dollar business decision based on who someone voted for. I mean, legally you can.
Not if you're a public company. If it's your own private lemonade stand, you can do whatever you want. But if you are managing other people's money, you have to take the $14,000. The law does not care if you think the buyer is a jerk.
Okay, so what we have is a board desperately trying to cling to power, an activist investor trying to force their hand, and two massive corporations circling the prey. But let's zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just about whether David Zaslav keeps his job. The source material talks about something bigger. It's about the deep state of Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's the term they used. Panicking about a tech takeover.
This is the existential crisis. This is the real story underneath the corporate drama. And to get it, we have to understand the fundamental difference between Hollywood and tech. They are two completely different.
I think most people kind of lump them together now, right?
Yeah.
Because we watch everything on screens.
Yeah.
But what is the actual fundamental difference in their DNA?
Okay, so traditional Hollywood studios, think Disney, Paramount, Warner, they are built on relationships and hit. It's a very human, if chaotic, business. They care about theatrical releases. They care about the prestige of winning an Oscar.
Like the glamour of it all.
Exactly. They have these century-old, often contentious relationships with unions and guilds and talent agents. There is a human element, a culture to the whole messy process.
And tech.
Tech is Netflix, Amazon, Apple. They are built on efficiency and data. They rely on algorithms. The source makes a really chilling point. Tech companies do not care about, they couldn't care less about the history of a studio.
Wow.
They don't care about keeping a specific number of people employed. They certainly don't care if movie theaters stink.
They don't care if Batman is cinema. They just care if clicking on the Batman thumbnail increases time spent on platform.
Precisely. You nailed it. If the algorithm says, you know what, people aren't watching black and white movies anymore, a tech owner might just delete Casablanca from the server to save storage space. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly.
That's terrifying.
Tech companies view content as asset packets, not as art. And that cultural difference is what has the old guard so scared.
And that fear brings us to the Block the Merger movement. This is an actual website, blockthemerger.com.
Right. This is organized by that deep state of Hollywood we mentioned. The insiders, the unions, the crew members, the writers, the actors, they are terrified. They see this tech takeover as an extinction-level event.
Yeah, their stated goal is to stop anyone from buying Warner Brothers, right? They don't want the Paramount deal either. They want to keep things the way they are.
Yes. Their ideal outcome is to maintain the status quo. They want the government, the Department of Justice, to step in and say, no, Warner Brothers must remain independent.
Is that even possible at this point? I mean, looking at the numbers, Warner Brothers is bleeding money. The source brought up the movie Highlander. There can be only one.
It's the perfect analogy for the streaming wars. It's so good. Think back to, say, 2019. Netflix was the undisputed king. And the traditional studios, Disney, Warner, Paramount, they all got jealous. They looked at Netflix and said, hey, we have all the good content. Why are we letting Netflix get rich off our show?
So they pulled everything back. They took The Office off. They took Friends, they took the Marvel movies, and they all started their own streaming service. Disney Plus, Max, Peacock, Paramount, plus Max.
They tried to starve Netflix of content. They thought, if we build it, they will come. But they made a fatal miscalculation. They forgot about the consumer's wallet.
Yeah, I'm not paying for 6 different services.
Yeah.
The whole reason I cut the cord in the first place was to save money, not to pay a steeper cable bill for 12 different apps I can't even remember the passwords to.
Exactly. No one wants that. Consumers have a limit. So now all these legacy studios are stuck. They spent billions of dollars building these platforms, but they aren't making enough money to sustain them. They tried to become tech companies, and they failed.
And now they're weak.
They are weak. And the actual tech companies, the real predators like Netflix and Amazon, are coming in to pick the bone. The studios tried to kill Netflix, but they only ended up mortally.
So the block the merger crowd is yelling stop, but the source is basically arguing that the patient is already terminal. You can stop the surgery, but the disease will still kill them.
Right. The source's argument is that you can block the merger, but you can't block bankruptcy. If Warner Brothers can't survive on its own, then independence just slow, painful death sale.
Let's get into the specific arguments from the unions, though, because while the economics might be inevitable, the human cost is very real. The Block the Merger campaign lists several major gripes. I want to go through them, but I also want us to be critical here as the source. Let's start with their first, fewer choices.
This is the classic antitrust argument, and it's a valid one. If you were an independent filmmaker, you used to have, say, 6 major studios. You had Fox, Disney, Warner, Paramount, Universal, Sony.
A decent number of doors to knock on.
A decent number. But then Disney buys Fox. And if Netflix buys Warner and Paramount merges with Skydance, suddenly you only have maybe 3 doors to knock on.
And if all 3 of those doors say no?
Then your movie doesn't exist. It's that simple. It shrinks the marketplace of ideas. Fewer buyers means fewer diverse voices, fewer risky projects, fewer interesting movies get heard.
And connected to that is their second point, distribution control. This one, as a movie fan, scares me the most.
It should. It's a legitimate fear. This is the fear that big media gets to decide what reality is, what stories are told, and what stories are buried. We've already seen Warner Brothers, under the current management, I should add, shelve-completed movies.
Right, Batgirl and Coyote versus Acme.
They literally deleted them, took a finished product and deleted it for a tax write-off.
Can you imagine working on a movie for 2 years, pouring your soul into it, and some suit in an office says, actually, we make more money if we just burn the negative? It's heartbreaking.
It's a creative nightmare. And the fear is that under a data-driven tech giant like Netflix, this becomes the standard operating. If a film doesn't fit the algorithm, or if it challenges corporate synergy in some way, it just vanishes.
It never reaches theaters. It never reaches schools or libraries. It's a form of cultural erasure.
That's the fear. Then there's the more direct impact. Lower pay and job losses.
This is the obvious one.
It is. Consolidation always leads to what they call synergy on Wall Street.
Which is a very polite corporate word for firing thousands of redundant.
It is exactly that. If Netflix buys Warner, they don't need 2 human resources. They don't need 2 legal. They don't need 2 marketing divisions. So thousands of people overnight their jobs.
And for the people who manage to stay, there's less competition for their labor, so wages go down over time.
It's basic supply and demand. If there are fewer companies to work for, those companies have more power to set. But the biggest point of contention, and this is the one that really threatens the livelihood of actors and writers, is residuals.
Ah, the mailbox money?
Yeah, famous mailbox money. The old Hollywood model was based on shared success. If you wrote an episode of Seinfeld, or if you were a supporting actor in Law & Order, you got paid when you did the work.
Sure.
But you also got a check every single time that show re-aired on television. That long-tail income is what allowed middle-class actors and writers to actually survive between jobs.
It's kind of like a pension plan that's built directly into the work itself.
Exactly. It was a system that created a creative middle class. But tech companies hate residuals. They absolutely despise. They view them as an ongoing liability on a spreadsheet.
So what's their model?
They want buyout. It's simple. We pay you once, maybe a slightly higher rate upfront, but we own the content forever in all galaxies in perpetuity, and you never hear from us again.
So if you act in a massive global hit on Netflix that is watched by 100 million people, you just get your day rate, and that's it.
You get a high five and a pat on. The source argues that this shift completely kills the middle class of Hollywood. In the new model, you are either a superstar making millions per project, or you are a day laborer struggling to pay rent. There is no sustainable.
Now here is where it gets really spicy. The source material we reviewed brings up a really sharp counter-argument to the unions, what it calls the monkey's paw theory.
Yeah.
And this is going to make some people angry.
It is a harsh assessment for sure. The monkey's paw, of course, is the famous horror story where you get your wish, but it comes with the terrible unforeseen curse.
Right.
The source argues that the unions SAG-AFTRA and the WGA wished for the moon during the big strikes of 2023.
And they got it, didn't they? I mean, They won. They got better rates. They got AI protections. They got data transparency from the streamers.
They did. On paper, they won the contract. It was a huge... But the source argues that by raising the cost of labor so significantly, so quickly, they inadvertently made production too expensive for the struggling studios.
So the studios looked at the new price tag for a writer or an actor and said, okay, we'll pay that new higher rate, but we can only afford to hire 10 of you now instead of the 100 we hired last year.
Exactly that. The source suggests the current contraction we're seeing, the fact that so few movies and TV shows are being greenlit right, is a direct result of that strike. The unions made labor more expensive, so the studios are simply buying less labor.
It's a brutal economic feedback loop.
It is. The unions won the battle for better terms, but might be losing the war because the sheer volume of jobs is just evaporating. It's a classic monkey's paw.
Yeah.
You get your wish, but it costs you everything.
And the unions would argue, probably correctly, that they had to strike because their members couldn't survive on the old rates. But the studios are saying, well, we can't survive on the new one.
And that perfect storm, that standoff, pushes the studios right into the arms of big tech and AI, who are promising to lower costs again by removing the human element entirely.
Speaking of strategy, let's pivot to the content itself, because the source suggests that if we look closely at what Warner Brothers is releasing right now, the trailers, the announcements, the PR, we can actually see this corporate desperation playing out in real time.
This section is fascinating. The source calls it reading the tea, and it centers on two of the biggest brands on the planet, DC Comics and Harry Potter.
Let's start with DC. James Gunn took over DC Studios. We have Superman coming. We have absolute Batman being hyped. The hype machine is relentless. It feels like every single day there's a new leak or a new poster declaring this the greatest thing ever made.
The source has a great word for this. They call it
puffery. I love that word.
It's a legal term, actually, from real estate and sales. It means exaggerating the value of a product right before you sell it. The theory here is that all this noise around DC isn't just organic fan enthusiasm. It is a giant blinking for sale sign.
They're dressing the pig for the market, as my grandpa would say.
It's a crude way to put it, but yes, essentially. Warner Brothers needs to convince a potential buyer, whether that's Netflix or Paramount, that DC is a goldmine, that it's on the verge of a huge comeback. So you have executives and employees all shouting from the rooftops, look how valuable this is, look how excited the fans are.
Because if the buyer looks at the last few DC movies and thinks it's dead weight,
they scrap, or they fire everyone and start from scratch. So the employees at DC are, in a way, fighting for their lives. They are hyping these projects to secure their own positions in whatever the new regime is going to be.
And the source pointed out that Marvel isn't doing this right now.
That's the tell, right? Marvel has had some flops recently, but you don't see the same level of frantic, performative hype. The relatively quiet tooling, the specific, almost desperate energy coming out of the DC side suggests they are trying to prove their worth to a new mass.
And then there's the wizard, Harry Potter. In the middle of all this, Warner Brothers announced a massive reboot, a full TV series that retells all 7 books.
The timing of that announcement was, let's just say, incredibly suspect. It dropped right in the middle of all this merger talk.
It feels like bait, like chum in the water.
It is absolutely bait. It's the ultimate sweetener for any deal. They're saying whoever buys us gets the keys to the kingdom. You get the rights to the biggest, most guaranteed streaming event of the next decade. It's a way to jack up the price of the whole company.
But the source goes even deeper than just the announcement. They talk about the rumored content changes. There have been all these leaks and rumors about race-swapping major characters like Hermione and modernizing the themes of the books. Now, usually this just sparks a big culture war debate online.
Right.
But the source sees it as a cold, calculated business strategy.
Yes, this is the really interesting part. The theory is that Warner Brothers is pre-packaging the show to appeal specifically to Netflix's corporate culture.
How so? What is that?
Well, Netflix has a very specific corporate culture and a very specific target audience demographic they cater to with their algorithm. They prioritize modern diversity standards. They love what you might call Bridgerton-style cast. The source argues that Warner Brothers is making these creative choices now to signal to Netflix, look, this product already fits your brand. brand. It's pre-chewed for you. You can slot this right into your algorithm with no friction.
So they aren't necessarily making the show for the legacy Harry Potter fan. They are making it for the potential buyer.
That is the accusation, yes. Content creation as corporate M&A strat. And it suggests, if true, that the fix is in, that the Warner Board is already tailoring their most valuable assets to make the Netflix deal go as smoothly as possible.
That is just, it's fascinating and also kind of depressing. It makes me look at every trailer and every casting announcement now and wonder, is this a movie or is this a slide in a PowerPoint presentation for an acquisition?
In 2026, it's probably both.
Okay, we've covered the boardroom, the unions, the content strategy, but I want to talk about the outsider. Because while everyone is fighting over the pieces of the old Hollywood system, there's a whole other world out there that's just ignoring. The source brought up a really interesting case study, the YouTube Markiplier.
Yes. Mark Fishbach, a massive gaming YouTuber, one of the biggest in the world.
So for listeners who don't know him, this guy has tens of millions of subscribers. He decided he wanted to make a horror movie called Iron Lung.
And this is where the story gets really instructive for our conversation. Markiplier didn't go to Warner Brothers. He didn't go to Netflix. He didn't pitch it to anyone. He self-financed higher movie. He paid for it out of his own pocket.
And he released it in theaters.
He completely bypassed the entire Hollywood.
He did. And the source points out this massive glaring hypocrisy here regarding the Block the Merger crowd. Remember, they claim one of their main goals is to protect independent film.
Right. Their whole message is, we are fighting for the little guy, for the independent creator. But Markiplier is the little guy. He is the literal definition of an independent creator. And what did the system, the Hollywood press, the distribution networks do when he released his?
Did they celebrate him? Did they roll out the red carpet for this indie success story?
No. According to the source, they tried to tank him, they ignored him, they treated him like an interloper, a trespasser.
But why? He's literally doing the exact thing they claim to love.
Because he's the wrong kind of independent. He proves that you don't need them. The Block the Merger crowd, the source argues, wants independent films that exist within their ecosystem. Films they can eventually buy at Sundance, distribute, and control. They want to be the gate. Markiplier proves the gate is broken and you can just walk around it.
That is a really powerful point. They want to seize the indie system, not necessarily the indie creator. The two are not the same thing.
Exact. Markiplier represents an existential threat. If creators can go directly to the audience and make millions of dollars without a studio taking a cut, then why does Warner Brothers even need to exist? Why does Netflix?
This connects directly to the future landscape that the source predicts. They use the word bifurcation, a massive split in the entertainment.
This is the prediction for the next 5 years, and it feels very plausible. The industry is going to split into two completely distinct and separate.
Okay, what's world number one?
World number one is the mega tentpole. This is what the consolidated studios, the new Netflix Warner or Paramount Warner will do. We're talking massive $500 million budgets, huge IP like Batman, Avatar, Marvel, heavily assisted by AI, costs down, and designed for a global, non-specific audience. Be events, not.
And world number two?
World number two is the creator economy. This is Markiplier. This is podcasts this is independent animation on YouTube. It's defined by low overhead, high audience engagement, and a direct connection between the creator and the consumer with no middleman.
And what happens to everything that used to be in the romantic comedies, the courtroom dramas, the mid-budget thrillers that cost $40 million?
They disappear. Or, more accurate, the jobs associated with the source makes a stark prediction. Within 5 years, there will be half as many jobs in traditional Hollywood as there are today.
A 50% reduction. That is an absolute bloodbath.
It is. And it's driven by that monkey's paw dynamic we discussed earlier, plus the unstoppable rise of AI. The source mentions that Dana Walden at Disney has been explicitly tasked incorporating AI into their. The goal is brutal, but it's simple. Remove the expense.
So the very same writers and actors who are fighting against this merger are fighting to save jobs that the studios are already actively trying to automate away, regardless of who owns.
It's a grim picture. The deep state of Hollywood is fighting desperately to keep the lights on in a building that the owners are already trying to demolish.
Wow. Okay, this has been heavy. I mean, we started with a corporate dispute over fiduciary duty, and we've ended up predicting the collapse of the middle class of the arts.
It is heavy, but it's important to look at it clearly without sentiment. This is what's happening.
So let's try to recap this whole chaotic situation. Warner Brothers is the sinking ship. The board, allegedly, is trying to hand it over to Netflix in a sweetheart deal to save their own skins and keep their discovery empire.
Right. Meanwhile, investors like Enkora are screaming fiduciary duty from the sideline, trying to force a sale to Paramount because the money is just flat out better for shareholders.
And the workers, the writers, actors, crew, the union, they are terrified of both outcomes because either way, the industry is shrinking, jobs are disappearing, and their way of life is ending.
And hovering over all of it, like a giant mothership, is big tech. Whether it's Netflix buying the assets for scrap or AI being developed to replace animators and writers, the power is shifting away from the creatives and toward the engineers.
The source used a Dune reference that I think is just perfect here. The spice must flow.
So good. The spice, of course, being the content, the stories.
Right. We will still have movies, we will still have Batman, we will still have Harry Potter. The spice will continue to flow.
It will, but the valve, the control mechanism,
Yeah.
is changing hands. Tech will control the valve.
And when you change who controls the valve, you change the flavor of the spice.
You do. It changes what gets made, who gets to make it, and most importantly, why. The entire purpose behind its creation shifts.
I guess that's the big provocative thought to leave our listeners with today. If Hollywood as we know it collapsed because it tried to copy Netflix and failed, and now Netflix is just buying the broken pieces, does culture just become whatever the algorithm decides we should see next?
That is the fundamental danger. If an algorithm decides that movies with sad endings cause a 2% drop in subscription rates, do we just never see a tragedy? Do we lose the complexity and richness of story because it's not?
And what about the other side? If the block the merger crowd gets their way and no one buys Warner Brothers, isn't the company just going to die a slow, painful death anyway? It feels like a choice between a quick death by firing squad or a slow transformation into something unrecognizable.
It's the Highlander reality. In the end, there can be only one, and right now the sword is falling, and we're all just watching to see whose head.
Well, on that cheerful note, maybe we should start our own independent studio before the robots take over. I've got an iPhone in a garage. We could do this.
I'll bring the lights. We can make a movie about all this. It'd be a tragedy, though, so the algorithm would bury it.
Done. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Keep your eyes on the news, because this battle for the soul of Warner Brothers is just getting started. We'll see you next time.